Right, let's take you back now to one of our leading stories, investigations into the mysterious death of South Africa's ambassador to France, Nathi Mthethwa. It continues. Now, the 58-year-old diplomat and former minister was found dead outside the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Paris. This is after he was reported missing on Monday. Let's get more now on this developing story. Joining me is Professor Roland, Henwood University of Pretoria's political lecturer. Professor, good evening to you. Thank you very much for your time. The purpose of our conversation is to discuss security detail, or should we say the lack thereof, around South Africa's ambassadors who are posted around the world. As we stand here today, the French authorities are investigating a possible suicide, but many have asked questions as to why it is that the ambassadors are not protected by way of providing them with bodyguards. Perhaps before we get into that discussion, let's take a listen for a moment to the spokesperson of the International Relations and Cooperation, who explained exactly when I put this question to him overnight.
Generally, no, ambassadors don't have security detail. Ours certainly don't. It's because ambassadors are regarded very highly in most countries, so they are really respected. Their cars are marked officially that this is an ambassadorial car. So it would be very strange, quite frankly, for an ambassador to have security detail. A designated driver, but it's not like a SAPS or official. It's normally someone whose specific task is to ensure that the ambassador is driven from one place to another. So it's not like in South Africa where official minister would be driven by a South African police service. No, yeah. They have a designated driver, yes, but not a trained security individual.
Professor Henwood, I hope you heard that. Crispin Piri speaking for Dirco. Is this a practice around the world that ambassadors are not really provided security detail, or is this confined to South Africa?
Good afternoon. Thank you. Just one correction, please. I'm not professor. If we go into the practice, what South Africa does is standard practice around the world. Diplomats have a specific legal framework that protects them, that provides them basically guaranteed freedom of movement, freedom of personal space, and conducting the official business that they are supposed to do. That, in other words, gives them a lot of latitude and a lot freedom of movement. And this is standard practice governed by international law, the Vienna Convention, etc. Where a diplomat is posted, it may be necessary for a security analysis to be done, a threat analysis in some cases. And if necessary, special arrangements can be made, and that can either be requesting the hosting government to provide security or providing your own security in terms of specific requirements. And diplomats are sometimes at risk. We've seen this, a number of tragic incidents where diplomats became targets, or in the context of warfare, where diplomats became casualties. So it happens. It's not a job that gives you ultimate the ultimate levels of security. There are risks. But there are no specific requirements and need for bodyguards or that kind of process. As indicated by Crispin Piri, the stature of people, the way in which they are treated and respected do not require this.
Yeah. Is that too trusting for a government to do that? Because someone will argue that's exposing them to harm. Might there be a review of this position given what has happened here? Yes, as I again repeat, French authorities are investigating a possible suicide, but there are things that have happened around Ambassador Mthethwa, in that he is found, his body is found at one point, and then the cell phone, his mobile phone, is a few meters, if not a kilometer away from him. We don't know exactly as to the distance, but does that indicate possible foul play? All I'm saying is that do we think the South African government might want to review this situation?
A review is only necessary and warranted if there are specific requirements for that. We must be very careful. I don't want to speculate on the specifics of this case because we have too little information. I don't think we should go there. But if we look at what is happening in terms of South Africa, it is very clear from the policies that apply, from the practices that have been instituted, that there is a responsible approach. And people who are appointed across the board are carefully vetted and prepared for the posting that they are going to undertake. And because of the stature, but also the responsibility that this requires. So I don't think one can point fingers at the South African government or Dirco at this stage. What they do is pretty much standard international practice. So if one goes to the specifics of an individual, and I'm not talking this case, but in a generic way, of course the individual carries a particular responsibility. And that would apply to any senior person in government or in any other sector, that you have certain responsibilities in terms of your conduct for yourself. If there are specific problems, of course, a bodyguard is not going to necessarily solve that.
Yeah.
And that is a different context altogether. And we see a lot of emphasis these days on the concept that is called well-being, and both physical well-being and mental well-being. And that is something that is also covered in terms of normal practices and protocols, but it's still the responsibility of the individual in the last instance to alert, to engage, and to act in a particular way. If there are any measures that prevent that, then of course one would look at what is the support system, people around that person that may alert. But in the end, you cannot protect people from everything all the time. It's just an impossible task. And there's another dimension, and I don't say this in a demeaning way, but the responsibilities of governments can only go so far. And then a number of issues kick in. I mean, one of the issues with postings abroad is cost. And that is something that has to be kept in mind because you are working with public funds. So you cannot just go out and provide all sorts of, often, most of the time, unnecessary costs and systems that does not enhance the functioning of the officer or the office that is in question.
Yeah.
So one must be very careful in terms of shifting blame, apportioning blame. Governments normally do, and the South African government in this context, I mean, it can be criticized for many things. But if one looks at the standard protocols and requirements, it actually does not fall short compared to any other country in the world.
You're absolutely correct, particularly on the question of cost, because we know that the South African government has had to cut back some of its missions around the world owing to the question of money. Final question to you, and briefly, if you can, Roland, what about the host country? Does it have any responsibility to the diplomat that is posted there in terms of, as you've said, their well-being, but also importantly, that they are protected?
Yes, they do have a responsibility. And again, those responsibilities are contained on the basis of national legislation, international law, the Vienna Conventions on Diplomatic Privileges, and most countries follow that to the letter. And will provide the required support and security. If there's a requirement for heightened security, that will normally be requested officially and provided. But again, there are limitations. You are not going to in any way constrain the personal freedom and the freedom to act of somebody with the stature of an ambassador or in a diplomatic position. So it's a question of balance. Most governments follow that. There are very few examples where governments are negligent on these issues, and that is due to legal requirements, the sensitivity and the sincerity between governments in terms of how diplomatic relations are normally managed and conducted.
Roland Henwood, University of Pretoria's political lecturer, thank you very much indeed for your time.